You useless old bastard. Why won't you just die? The words are a whisper, a venomous little prayer lost in the stale, medicated air of the master bedroom. They escape my lips before I can stop them, breathed into the darkness like a puff of smoke. My husband, Arthur, 30 years my senior, snores on, oblivious, a great, beached whale of a man, his chest rising and falling with a sound like thunder rolling through a distant valley. It's dry AM, again, and I am awake, again. Sleep is a luxury I can no longer afford, not with the symphony of his failing body playing beside me every night. The snoring, the wheezing, the sudden choking gasps as his sleep apnea takes hold. It's the soundtrack to my life sentence. My name is Victoria. I am 40 years old, and for the last 10 years, I have been the beautiful, dutiful, and utterly miserable wife of Arthur Albright. What does a 40-year-old woman do, you wonder, when her days are spent caring for a 70-year-old man? A man she married not for love, but to save her family from financial ruin. My father's business had collapsed. You see, a lifetime of work, gone. We were drowning in debt. Arthur, the recently widowed, obscenely wealthy chief of surgery at SF General, threw us a lifeline. A golden, gilded lifeline with a very heavy chain attached. He paid off everything, and in return, I became his wife, his companion, the pretty young thing on his arm at fundraisers, the manager of his household, the keeper of his quiet, orderly retirement. My days became a blur of sameness. Cook his low-sodium meals, walk with him slowly, so slowly, through the perfectly manicured gardens, go shopping for things I didn't want with money I hadn't earned. A decade, 10 years of my life, gone. They say money can't buy happiness. They're right. It can, however, buy a very comfortable, very beautiful, and very empty cage. The 30-year gap between us wasn't just a number, it was a canyon. We had no real connection, no shared jokes, no passion. In the early years, sex was a duty, performed once or twice a month with grim, joyless efficiency. For the last 5 years, as his health faltered, it has been nothing at all. And what is a marriage without intimacy? It's a job, and I have been the most dedicated employee. Arthur has 2 children, a son and a daughter, both brilliant, both following in his medical footsteps. His first wife, God rest her soul, died of cancer, and a few years later, he found me, or rather, he bought me. His son, Ethan, now runs the hospital. He's the new chief of neurosurgery. He's handsome, charming, a man who commands every room he enters. He is also 40, exactly my age. 10 years I've lived this life, trapped. Arthur's litany of ailments is my daily checklist. Kidney failure, high blood pressure, a weak heart. All of it meant we could never have children of our own. So my life remained this stagnant pool, caring for him, day in, day out, cooking his special meals, accompanying him on his slow, shuffling walks. The repetition has ground me down into a fine, bitter powder. I am a woman in my prime, a volcano of needs and desires, shackled to a dormant mountain. He hasn't touched me in years, not once. I have all the money in the world, but I am starving, not for food, but for a touch that means something, for a look that isn't clouded with age and infirmity. I am dying of emotional and physical starvation. And then, a month ago, a crack appeared in the wall of my prison. It was at the community pool, a place Arthur insists we go for his water therapy. I was climbing out of the water, and I slipped, just for a second, but in that second, a strong arm shot out and caught me. I fell back against a hard, warm chest. I looked up, water streaming from my hair, and found myself staring into Ethan's eyes. His touch was electric, a jolt of life, of raw, masculine energy that I hadn't felt in a decade. His body, solid and powerful against mine. That one accidental collision set my world on fire. In that one fleeting moment, the thunderbolt hit. I was gone, utterly, hopelessly infatuated with my husband's son. I know he's married to a wonderful woman named Claire. They have a little girl. I know it's wrong, insane, but this secret obsession has become the only thing that makes me feel alive. It has turned my gray world to color. It's a dangerous fantasy, a dream of a life where he and I are together, a dream I've begun to believe I can make real. Now, lying here in the dark, the sound of Arthur snoring a physical weight on my chest, I reach for my phone. The blue light illuminates my face. I open my photo gallery to the folder I've named Renovations. It's filled with pictures I've secretly saved from Ethan's social media. I stare at his face, the strong jaw, the intelligent eyes, the easy smile. He is my reason for breathing, my motivation to endure one more day of this living death. Looking at his picture is the only thing that keeps me from screaming. 10 years of being a pampered nursemaid has preserved me, I suppose. I don't look 40. People say I look 30. My skin is smooth. My body is toned from the endless hours at the private gym. I know how to dress, how to accentuate every curve. I am beautiful. I am desirable. And it's all going to waste. What's the point of being a masterpiece if you're locked away in a vault where no one can see you? Is this it? I whisper to my reflection in the dark screen. Is this my whole life? Just waiting in the dark. Every single day, I pray. I don't pray for health or for happiness anymore. I pray for Arthur to die. I pray for the snoring to stop. I pray for my freedom. A text message chimes, making me jump. It's from Ethan. My heart leaps. Hi, Victoria. Just confirming I'll be over for dinner tomorrow night. Dad asked me to stop by. My fingers tremble as I type a reply. Of course. I'll make that special beef stew you like so much. A sudden jolt of joy, sharp and illicit, courses through me. He's coming, tomorrow. A surge of energy banishes all thoughts of sleep. I know exactly why he loves my beef stew. It's a secret recipe, something I perfected over the years. I've never shared it, not with Claire, not even with our housekeeper. It's my thing. My special connection to him. It's my excuse to cook for him, to see him, to have him in this house. It's one of the few weapons in my arsenal, and I guard it jealously. Tomorrow, I have to look perfect. I slip out of bed, careful not to disturb the snoring lump beside me, and pad into the massive walk-in closet. I flip on the soft vanity lights and stare at my reflection. Still got it, I think. A flicker of my old self, the woman I was before Arthur, surfacing for a moment. I turn from side to side, assessing. Firm breasts, a round, high ass, smooth pale skin. I'm a feast, and I'm being forced to serve it to a man with no appetite. Such a goddamn waste, I mutter, pulling a dress from the rack. A deep crimson silk wrap dress, simple, elegant, and it clings to every curve. Perfect for tomorrow. The doorbell rings, sharp and insistent, pulling me from my reverie. My heart does a little flip. It's him. I smooth down my dress, take a deep breath, and walk to the door. A welcoming smile plastered on my face. Ethan, you're here, I say, my voice a little too bright. He smiles politely, stepping inside. He's holding a small, beautifully wrapped gift bag. Hello, Victoria. His eyes do a quick, almost imperceptible scan over my body, my dress. I see a flicker of appreciation, or maybe I'm just imagining it, wishing for it. You look lovely. You get younger every day. My cheeks flush with pleasure. It feels like I've just been handed a glass of cool water after a decade in the desert. Oh, stop it, I laugh, playfully swatting his arm. You're just saying that, I swear. I'm telling the truth, he says, his expression serious now. No one would ever guess you're 40. You look 30, tops. His words are like a drug. I'm giddy, floating. This is all I need. This small validation from him is worth more than all of Arthur's millions. Well, you're just trying to make me happy, I say, leading him into the dining room. Honestly, Victoria, you're a beautiful woman. I'm smiling so hard my face hurts. This is what I live for. These tiny crumbs of attention he throws my way. Arthur is already at the table, looking frail and ancient under the light of the crystal chandelier. The three of us sit down to eat. I make a great show of doting on my husband, cutting his meat, making sure his water glass is full, laughing at his weak jokes. A performance for an audience of one. I see the look on Ethan's face. It's one of deep, profound gratitude. He sees a loving wife caring for his ailing father. He's busy. He has his own family, and he's relieved that I'm here, taking on the burden so he doesn't have to. He feels indebted to me. Good, I think. That's exactly what I want. I will be so indispensable, so perfect, that he will have no choice but to take care of me when the time comes. I will be his responsibility, his inheritance. I am owed this for my 10 years of service, and I will collect. After dinner, Ethan stays for another hour, making polite conversation with his father while I clear the plates. The air is thick with the unspoken things, the comfortable lies we've all agreed to live by. I watch him from the kitchen, the way he leans forward, listening patiently to one of Arthur's rambling stories, the way the light catches the silver strands at his temples. He is everything. Finally, he stands to leave, giving his father a brief, awkward hug. He turns to me at the door. Thank you for dinner, Victoria. It was wonderful, as always. Anytime, Ethan. You know that. He gives me a warm, grateful smile, and then he's gone. The sound of his car pulling away leaves a ringing silence in its wake. The house suddenly feels 10 times bigger, 10 times emptier. Just then, the new housekeeper, a talkative woman in her late 50s, named Maria, comes up from the laundry room. She had started just last week and was still getting the lay of the land. She'd seen Ethan leaving as she walked up the driveway. My, she says, a wide, knowing grin on her face. You two make such a handsome couple, like a movie star and his beautiful wife. My heart stops. A delicious, dangerous thrill shoots through me. She thinks Ethan is my husband. Arthur, who had shuffled into the hallway behind me, lets out a gruff cough. She is my wife. Maria's eyes widen in comical surprise. She looks from Arthur's wrinkled, liver-spotted face to my smooth, 40-year-old skin, and her brain visibly short-circuits. The confusion is plain on her face. Oh my, I do apologize, Mr. Albright, but the damage, or the gift, was done. She couldn't help but add, a little too loudly, it's just you two. The age difference. I assumed the handsome gentleman was. Well, you know. Arthur's face darkens. The compliment I received has become an insult to him. Maria, sensing she's dug herself into a hole, tries to backpedal. Of course, he gets his good looks from you, sir. A chip off the old block. That's what I always say. That only makes it worse. I'm going to my study, Arthur grumbles, turning his back on us and shuffling away down the hall. Maria looks at me, mortified. Mrs. Albright, I am so terribly sorry. I didn't mean any disrespect. I wave a dismissive hand, but inside, I'm secretly glowing. The housekeeper's mistake was the purest, most honest compliment I had received all night. It was an affirmation of my fantasy. "Don't you worry about it, Maria," I say, my voice dripping with magnanimity. "It's an honest mistake. He's just sensitive." Later, I go to find Arthur in his study. He's sitting in his leather armchair, staring into the unlit fireplace. I come up behind him and place my hands on his shoulders, kneading the tense muscles. My touch is practiced, therapeutic, and completely devoid of affection. "Don't listen to her, darling," I whisper into his ear. "She doesn't know anything. In my eyes, you are the most handsome man in the world. You'll always be my strong, brilliant Arthur." He reaches up and pats my hand, a flicker of gratitude in his tired eyes. "Thank you, my dear. Thank you for always being by my side." For another 10 years, and 10 more after that, I lie smoothly. "As long as you'll have me," he smiles, a weak, placated smile. I smile too, but my smile is a mask. In my mind, I am screaming. Another 20 years, I'd rather burn in hell. That night, lying in bed next to his snoring form, the housekeeper's words echo in my mind. Such a handsome couple. She saw what I see, what should be. The injustice of my situation feels like a physical weight on my chest, suffocating me. I can't wait for nature to take its course. I can't waste another 10 years of my life. I have to expedite the process. I start doing research. I spend hours on the internet, on medical forums, reading articles on my phone, while Arthur dozes in front of the television. I learn everything there is to know about his conditions, what exacerbates them, what foods are the equivalent of a slow-acting poison for a man with a failing heart and kidneys. Sugar, saturated fats, sodium. The next morning, I am a woman with a new sense of purpose. I go into the kitchen and dismiss Maria for the day. I feel like cooking for my husband, myself today, I announce with a beatific smile. I make him a beautiful breakfast, a rich, creamy oatmeal, loaded with brown sugar and heavy cream. He eats every bite, praising my cooking, oblivious to the fact that he is eating my resentment, my desperation, my quiet, murderous intent. For lunch, I bake a pizza, thick with salty cheese and pepperoni. For dinner, I fry chicken, the way his mother used to make it, crispy and laden with fat. I pour him a full sugar soda, clinking my glass of water against his. "To us," I say, smiling lovingly. He beams at me. He thinks this is affection. He thinks I am finally settling into the role of a doting wife, spoiling him in his old age. He doesn't see that I am not feeding him. I am killing him. Days turn into weeks. I become a connoisseur of slow poisons disguised as comfort food. Rich desserts, salty snacks, fatty meats. I am Florence Nightingale in reverse, the angel of death in a designer apron, and I watch, with a cold, clinical detachment, as he begins to decline. He gets heavier. His breathing becomes more labored. He complains of fatigue, of a deep, unshakable exhaustion. He spends more and more of his day sleeping in his armchair. One Saturday, Ethan brings his family over, Claire and their little girl, Maya. Claire is polite, but cool. There is a distance in her eyes when she looks at me. She is intelligent. I think, on some level, she senses that I am not what I appear to be. She sees me as the young trophy wife, a necessary but slightly distasteful part of her family's life. I, in turn, feel a venomous jealousy towards her. She has him. She has the life that should be mine. I watch her interact with Ethan, the easy shorthand of a long marriage, the shared smiles over their daughter's head, and I hate her for it, so I play my part with even more gusto. I am the perfect hostess, the perfect stepmother-in-law, But behind my smile, I am sizing her up, looking for weaknesses, filing away information. I am a predator, and she is standing in the middle of my hunting ground. My goal is simple. I need to drive a wedge between them. I need her gone. But first, Arthur has to be gone. He is the first and largest obstacle. That night, after everyone has left, I have a dream. It is a vivid, technicolor dream. I am at the community pool with Arthur. The sun is bright. The water is a brilliant, chemical blue. I am sitting on a lounge chair, and he is swimming. I turn away for a moment to answer my phone. When I look back, he is floating, face down, in the middle of the pool. In the dream, I scream. I dive in. I pull his heavy, lifeless body to the side. I perform a dramatic, heart-wrenching scene of grief, crying and wailing his name. But then the dream shifts. I am in my bedroom, the door closed. I look in the mirror, and the grief is gone. My face is alight with pure, unadulterated triumph. I raise my arms in victory and let out a silent, joyful scream. He's gone. I'm free. It worked. Victoria. Victoria, wake up. The voice pulls me from the dream. I open my eyes. Arthur is leaning over me, his face, with its white thinning hair and papery skin, just inches from mine. He is alive. He is real. The dream was just a dream. A wave of disappointment, so profound, it makes me nauseous, washes over me. It wasn't real. He's still here. I quickly mask my expression, forcing a sleepy smile. Good morning, darling, I say, my voice raspy. Did I wake you? You were making noises, he says, shuffling back to his side of the bed. A bad dream? Just a silly dream, I lie. What would you like for breakfast today? I was thinking of making waffles with extra whipped cream. He smiles. Whatever you want to make for me, my dear. Even poison, if you were eating it with me. He means it as a joke, a romantic, if slightly morbid, declaration of his trust in me. I feel a chill run down my spine. I get out of bed and walk to the kitchen, his words echoing in my ears. I look out the window at the gray morning sky. Damn it, I whisper to myself. It was just a dream. When will it be real? Just then, Maria the housekeeper walks in. I immediately switch on my bright, cheerful smile. Maria, good morning. Could you run to the store for me? I want to get the freshest ingredients. I'm making a special brunch for my husband today. Maria beams at me. Of course, Mrs. Albright. You are such a good wife. He is a very lucky man. I smile back, a perfect, serene, loving smile. She has no idea. No one has any idea what a good wife I truly am. The next week, in a gesture meant to reignite some spark in our fossilized marriage, Arthur decides we should go to the movies. Like a real couple, like a young couple in love. The idea is so absurd, it's almost funny. But I play along, feigning delight. Oh, Arthur, what a wonderful idea. It's been so long. We go to a luxury cinema downtown, the kind with plush reclining seats and a waiter service that brings you cocktails and gourmet snacks. It's all part of his fantasy, this performance of a normal, happy marriage. He orders a giant bucket of popcorn, glistening with butter, and 2 large, full-sugar sodas, despite my half-hearted protests. A little treat won't hurt us, my dear, he says, winking at me. He thinks this is romance. I know it is another nail in his coffin. The movie is a comedy. The theater is filled with the sound of laughter. I sit beside him in the flickering darkness, mechanically bringing handfuls of popcorn to my lips, my mind a million miles away. I am watching the film, but I am not seeing it. I am calculating, waiting. Suddenly, a loud, booming laugh from the audience is cut short by a different sound, a strangled, gasping noise coming from the seat next to me. I turn. Arthur's face is contorted in a silent scream. His eyes are wide with terror, his hands clawing at his chest. He slumps forward, his body convulsing. He tries to speak, but only a wet, gurgling sound comes out. He grabs my arm, his grip surprisingly, desperately strong. Victoria. He rasps, his eyes pleading, begging me. Help me. The world narrows to this one moment. The sound of the movie, the laughter of the strangers around us, it all fades into a dull roar. There is only the darkness, the buttery smell of popcorn, and the man beside me, dying. This is it. This is the moment from my dream. This is my chance. My heart is a frantic drum against my ribs, a wild, panicked bird trapped in a cage. Do something. A voice screams in my head. Call for help. But another voice, a colder, calmer voice, whispers, do nothing. This is what you wanted. Let it happen. I freeze. I just sit there, my face a mask of wide-eyed confusion, my body paralyzed. I watch as the light begins to fade from his eyes. He is still looking at me, his grip on my arm weakening, and in that final, terrible second, I see a flicker of understanding in his gaze, of realization. He knows. He knows I am not helping him. He sees me, for the first time, not as his doting wife, but as his executioner. His hand goes limp, sliding from my arm and thudding softly onto the plush seat. His body goes still. Silence. I wait. 1 second. 2. 3. I need to be sure. I lean in close, my hair brushing his cold, clammy cheek. I feel for a breath. Nothing. Then I take a deep, shuddering breath, and I let out a scream. A perfectly pitched, piercing scream of terror and grief that cuts through the laughter of the theater like a shard of glass. Help! Somebody help! My husband. I think he's having a heart attack. The chaos that erupts is immediate. People turn. Lights come up. Someone calls 911. I am the center of a storm of pity and concern. I allow myself to collapse against him, sobbing hysterically, playing the part of the devastated, helpless wife to perfection. By the time the paramedics arrive, it's far too late. They pronounce him dead at the scene. The hospital is a blur of sterile white walls and hushed, sympathetic voices. Ethan and Claire arrive, their faces etched with shock. Claire's daughter, his sister, is on a plane from London. I am a wreck, a beautiful, tragic wreck. I am inconsolable. I cling to Ethan, burying my face in his chest, my body shaking with manufactured sobs. He holds me, his arms strong and comforting around me. He murmurs soothing words, telling me it's going to be okay, that he's here for me. He has no idea. He thinks he is comforting his grieving stepmother. He doesn't know that he is embracing his father's killer. He doesn't know that my tears are not tears of sorrow, but of triumph. The funeral is my masterpiece. I am Ophelia in a black Chanel suit. My eyes are red and swollen from crying, or rather, from rubbing them with a piece of onion I'd kept hidden in my handkerchief. I stumble when I walk, leaning heavily on Ethan for support. Every person who comes to offer their condolences remarks on my devotion, my palpable grief. Poor Victoria, they whisper. She loved him so much. She must be absolutely lost without him. I am lost, all right. Lost in the dizzying, intoxicating thrill of my newfound freedom. When Ethan stands beside me at the gravesite, watching them lower the casket into the earth, I allow myself to collapse against him again, my grief a public spectacle. He wraps his arm tightly around my waist, holding me up. I can feel the solid muscle of his body through his suit, smell the clean, masculine scent of his cologne. It's all I can do not to turn my face and press my lips against his neck. Soon, I tell myself, be patient. The timing has to be perfect. In the black limousine on the way back to the house, I keep my head resting on his shoulder. Claire sits opposite us, her expression composed but strained. She watches my display of grief with a cool, analytical gaze. I can feel her disapproval. She thinks my grief is too theatrical, too much. She's right, of course, but she doesn't know why. When we get back to the house, I immediately play the fragile card. I can't possibly face all those people. It's too much. Ethan, ever the dutiful son, helps me up the stairs, away from the murmuring crowd. As we reach the master bedroom, I stumble dramatically, falling against him. Oh, Ethan. I'm so sorry. My legs they won't hold me. He catches me easily, his hands firm on my arms. It's okay, Victoria. I've got you. He guides me into the room. My room now, no longer ours. He helps me to a sitting position on the edge of the vast, empty bed. He looks so concerned, so full of pity for me. It's almost intoxicating. Claire appears in the doorway. She takes in the scene, weak and trembling on the bed, her husband leaning over me with a look of deep concern, her lips thin into a tight line. I can take it from here, Ethan, she says, her voice cool and clipped. Why don't you go downstairs and be with our guests? It's not a suggestion, it's an order. Ethan hesitates, looking from me to his wife. I seize the opportunity. I reach out and cling to his hand, my eyes wide and pleading. Please don't leave me, Ethan. Just for a minute. I'm scared to be alone. He is caught, trapped between his duty to his wife and his perceived duty to his father's fragile, grieving widow. He gives Claire an apologetic look. Just for a few minutes, Claire, until she calms down. Claire's jaw tightens, but she just gives a curt nod and leaves, pulling the door almost closed behind her. The moment she is gone, I begin to sob again. Quiet, heartbreaking sobs. Ethan sits down on the bed beside me, awkwardly patting my back. It's okay, Victoria. It's going to be okay. No, it's not, I whisper, my voice catching. He's gone. I have no one. I lean into him, my head resting against his chest. I can feel the steady, rhythmic beat of his heart, the beat of a life that is just beginning. Now that his father's has ended, I am so close. The plan is working. It's all falling into place. He doesn't pull away. He just sits there, holding me, letting me cry. He thinks he is being a good son, a good man. He is being a fool, a pawn in a game he doesn't even know he's playing. And soon, very soon, the king will be mine. The weeks that follow are a carefully orchestrated dance. I remain the fragile widow, but a widow who is becoming increasingly and conveniently dependent on her handsome stepson. The house is too big, too full of memories. I can't sleep. I can't eat. The boiler is making a strange noise. The insurance paperwork is too confusing. Every problem is a pretext for a phone call. Every call is a plea for his presence. And he comes, every time. He fixes the boiler. He helps with the paperwork. He brings me food. He sits with me, listening patiently as I share manufactured memories of his father. He is trying to be a good son, to honor his father by taking care of me. One evening, he brings over a bottle of wine and a pizza, an attempt to cheer me up. We sit in the vast, formal dining room, the pizza box a comical centerpiece on the polished mahogany table. I just wanted to make sure you were eating, he says, a look of genuine concern on his face. You're so good to me, Ethan, I say, my eyes welling up on command. Arthur was so lucky to have a son like you. He was lucky to have a wife like you, Victoria. You made his last years happy. I'll always be grateful to you for that. The irony is so thick I could choke on it. I reach across the table and place my hand over his. A simple, comforting gesture, but I let my fingers linger. I stroke the back of his hand with my thumb. Slowly, deliberately. He freezes. His eyes dart from my hand to my face. The air in the room shifts. The comfortable, familial dynamic evaporates, replaced by something tense, uncertain, and charged. He slowly pulls his hand away, clearing his throat. It's getting late, he says, not meeting my eyes. I should probably get going. Claire will be waiting up. Of course, I say, my voice a soft whisper. I don't push. Not yet. But I have planted the seed. He felt it. That spark. That flicker of something that was not grief and not gratitude. He knows. And now, he will be thinking about it. And that is exactly where I want him. Unsettled, confused, and wanting more. Ethan's retreat was not a victory for him, but a tactical advantage for me. By denying the kiss, he had acknowledged its possibility. He had admitted the current was there. Now, every interaction would be colored by that charged moment by the fire. He thought he was being a good man by resisting temptation. In reality, he was simply becoming more obsessed with it. I gave him space. For a week, I didn't call. I didn't text. I let him stew in his own guilt and confusion. I let him wonder. I let him miss the drama, the illicit thrill I offered, a stark contrast to the comfortable, predictable rhythm of his married life. Silence was my new weapon. During this time, I focused on gathering intelligence. I needed to understand Claire better, to find the cracks in their seemingly perfect marriage. I invited a mutual acquaintance for lunch, a woman who served on the hospital fundraising committee with me and whose daughter was in Maya's class. Over overpriced salads, I gently steered the conversation. Claire is just so impressive, I'd say with a sigh of admiration, running that prestigious school, being a perfect mother. I don't know how she does it all. Ethan is so lucky. Oh, she's a powerhouse, the woman agreed. But, you know, she leaned in conspiratorially. I think it takes a toll. She's always working, always at a conference or a school event. I sometimes wonder if poor Ethan ever sees her. Bingo. Claire was dedicated, ambitious, and career-focused. She was a partner, an equal. But men like Ethan, men raised by powerful fathers and traditional mothers, they don't always want an equal. Sometimes they want to be worshipped. They want to be the center of a woman's universe. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that I could offer him a kind of all-consuming adoration that a woman like Claire never would. After a week of silence, I made my next move. I knew from my intel gathering that Ethan and Claire were attending a major hospital gala on Saturday night. It was the biggest social event of the year for the San Francisco medical community. I, as Arthur's grieving widow, was also invited. I spent the entire day preparing. This wasn't just about looking beautiful. This was about making a statement. I chose a dress that was the color of midnight, a deep, inky blue silk that slithered over my body. It was deceptively simple from the front, with a high neckline, but the back was cut daringly, dangerously low, revealing the smooth, pale skin of my back all the way down to my waist. My hair was swept up in an elegant chignon, drawing attention to my neck and shoulders. My only jewelry was a pair of diamond teardrop earrings that had belonged to Arthur's first wife. A subtle, calculated touch of cruelty. When I arrived at the gala, held in the glittering ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel, I made my entrance. I walked in alone, a solitary, tragic, and breathtakingly beautiful figure. Heads turned. Whispers followed me. I could feel the collective gaze of the room, a mixture of pity, admiration, and curiosity. I found my assigned table and sat, a serene, melancholy smile on my face. And then I waited. I saw them across the room. Ethan looked impossibly handsome in his tuxedo. Claire was beside him, elegant and poised in a silver gown. But she looked tired. There were faint lines of stress around her eyes. She was talking to a group of hospital donors, a polite, professional smile on her face. She was working. Ethan's eyes scanned the room, and then they found me. He froze. I watched as his gaze traveled over my dress, my bare back, my face. His polite social mask slipped for just a fraction of a second, and I saw something else in his eyes. Hunger. I held his gaze for a moment, then gave him a small, sad smile, and looked away, as if seeing him with his wife was too painful to bear. I had just cast him as the villain in our tragic, unspoken love story. Throughout the night, I felt his eyes on me. I would be talking to someone, laughing softly, and I'd feel the heat of his stare on my skin. He was a compass, and I was his magnetic north. He kept drifting back to me. My chance came during the dessert course. Claire was pulled away by the chairman of the board. Ethan was left alone at their table. I waited a moment, then stood and began to make my way towards the ladies' room, a path that would conveniently take me right past his table. As I approached, I stumbled, my hand flying out to his shoulder to steady myself. A classic move, but effective. "Oh, I'm so sorry," I breathed, looking down at him. He looked up at me, his face just inches from mine. He could smell my perfume. He could see the soft swell of my breasts above the neckline of my dress. "Victoria," he said, his voice low and tight. "You look stunning." "Thank you," I whispered. I almost didn't come. It felt wrong. Being here without Arthur, I let my eyes fill with tears again, a tool I was becoming ruthlessly adept at using. But I knew I had to, for the hospital, for his legacy. My hand was still on his shoulder. I didn't move it. "You're very strong," he said, his eyes not leaving mine. "I'm not," I said, my voice barely audible. "I'm falling apart, Ethan, and you're the only one who seems to see it." I leaned in closer, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "I have to get out of here. It's too much. Can you walk me out to my car? I don't want to make a scene by leaving alone." It was a test, a direct challenge. Would he choose his public duty, his wife, or would he choose me? He hesitated for a heartbeat. I could see the war behind his eyes. Then he gave a curt nod. "Of course." He stood and offered me his arm. As we walked through the crowded ballroom, 100 pairs of eyes followed us. The handsome, grieving son escorting his beautiful, grieving stepmother. It was all so perfect, so tragic, so utterly believable. We didn't speak in the elevator. The silence was thick with everything we weren't saying. As we stepped out into the cool, damp San Francisco night, the valet brought my car around. He walked me to the passenger side, opening the door for me. I slid in, but didn't move to start the car. I looked up at him. "Thank you, Ethan." "Anytime," he said, his hand still on the car door. He was lingering. He didn't want to go back upstairs. "Is she waiting for you?" I asked softly. He knew who I meant. He sighed, a sound of profound weariness. "She's always working." It was a small complaint, but it was the crack I had been looking for. The first sign of disloyalty. I reached out and placed my hand on his, which was resting on the car door. "She doesn't see you, Ethan," I whispered. "Not really, not the way I do." He looked down at our hands, then back at my face. The torment in his eyes was palpable. He was a good man who wanted, desperately, to do a bad thing. I made the decision for him. I leaned across the console, my face close to his. "Just tell me to stop," I whispered, my lips almost brushing his. "Tell me this is wrong, and I'll drive away and never bother you again." He stared at me, his breathing ragged. He was supposed to say stop. He needed to say stop. He said nothing, and in that silence, I had my answer. I closed the small gap between us and kissed him. This time, there was no hesitation, no pulling back. It was a kiss of pure, unadulterated desperation. His hand left the door and tangled in my hair, pulling me closer. It was messy and frantic, and it tasted of expensive wine and a decade of my own starvation. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless. "My God, Victoria," he gasped. "Get in the car, Ethan," I said, my voice low and urgent. "What? Where are we going?" "Home," I said, looking him directly in the eye. "We're going home." And without another word, he walked around to the driver's side, got in, and drove us away from the gala, away from his wife, away from his life, and into the darkness. He was mine. The drive back to my house, Arthur's house, was a blur of rain-streaked city lights and roaring silence. Ethan drove my car with a tense, white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel, his eyes fixed on the road. He was a man running from a fire, not realizing he was driving straight into the heart of the inferno. I sat beside him, my heart a triumphant, pounding drum. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The air was thick with the irreversible nature of what we had just done. When he pulled into the long, curving driveway, he killed the engine but made no move to get out. He just sat there, the dashboard lights casting his face in an eerie green glow. He looked stricken, like a man who had just woken up from a dream to find himself in the middle of a nightmare. "We shouldn't have done that," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "Shouldn't we have?" I asked softly. I reached across the console and placed my hand on his thigh. He flinched but didn't pull away. I began to slowly, deliberately, trace small circles on the fine wool of his trousers. "Claire." He breathed, his wife's name a ghost on his lips. "Claire is at a party, Ethan," I said, my voice a low, hypnotic purr. "Claire is working. Claire isn't here." I leaned closer, my lips near his ear. "But I am." I felt a shudder go through him. The last vestiges of his resistance were crumbling. He was a man drowning, and I was the storm. I got out of the car and walked to the front door, not looking back to see if he was following. I knew he would. He was a moth, and I was a flame he could no longer resist. I heard his car door open and shut, his footsteps heavy on the gravel behind me. Inside, the house was dark and silent, save for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. It felt like a tomb, but tonight, it would be the stage for a resurrection. I didn't turn on the lights. I led him by the hand through the familiar darkness, up the grand, sweeping staircase, past the closed door of Arthur's study, and into the master bedroom. My bedroom. The room was bathed in the cool, silvery light of the moon filtering through the bay windows. I turned to face him. Without a word, I reached up and began to unpin my hair, letting it fall in a dark cascade over my shoulders and down my bare back. It was a gesture of surrender, of intimacy. He watched me, his eyes dark with a mixture of desire and self-loathing. He was sinning, and he knew it. He was betraying his wife, his family, the memory of his father, all in this one room. And that knowledge, that forbidden, transgressive thrill, was precisely what made it so intoxicating. He closed the distance between us in 2 long strides. His hands came up to cup my face, his thumbs stroking my cheekbones. "This is insane," he murmured, more to himself than to me. "Yes," I breathed, and then I pulled his mouth down to mine. What happened next was not lovemaking. It was a collision, a frantic, desperate shedding of years of frustration, loneliness, and forbidden desire. It was clothes torn off and discarded, hungry mouths and searching hands, the raw, animalistic need of two people taking what they had been denied. For him, it was a release from the pressure of his perfect life. For me, it was a conquest, a reclamation. I was taking back the years this house had stolen from me, on the very bed where I had been a prisoner for so long. Afterwards, we lay tangled in the sheets, the moonlight painting stripes across our sweat-slicked bodies. He was breathing heavily, his eyes closed. He looked younger, the lines of stress and worry temporarily erased from his face. He also looked guilty as hell. I, on the other hand, felt a profound and terrifying sense of peace, a calm that comes only after a long and brutal war has finally been won. I had done it. I had maneuvered and manipulated and seduced my way to this exact moment. He was here. He was mine. He finally stirred, sitting up and swinging his legs over the side of the bed, his back to me. "I have to go," he said, his voice flat. "Don't," I said, sitting up and wrapping my arms around his back, pressing my cheek against his warm skin. "Stay, just for tonight." "I can't," he said, pulling away from me and starting to gather his scattered clothes. "Claire will be home. She'll wonder where I am." The mention of her name was like a splash of cold water. The reality of our situation, the messy, complicated consequences, came rushing back in. He was panicking, trying to put his perfect life back together before she noticed it was broken. He dressed quickly, not looking at me, as he stood by the door, ready to flee the scene of his crime. He finally turned to me. "Victoria," he started, "last night, tonight, it was a mistake." I felt a flash of cold fury, but I masked it with a look of deep hurt. "A mistake?" I whispered, pulling the sheet up to cover myself. The picture of a vulnerable, wounded woman. "Is that all this was to you?" "It can't happen again," he said, his voice firm, desperate. "This was a one-time lapse in judgment. We have to forget it ever happened." He was trying to erase me, to reduce this monumental, life-altering event to a sordid little secret, to be buried and forgotten. He didn't understand. I had not orchestrated this entire affair just for a one-night stand. He started to open the door. "I'm pregnant, Ethan." The words dropped into the silent room like a grenade. He froze, his hand on the doorknob. He turned around so slowly it was almost painful. His face was a canvas of pure, uncomprehending shock. "What? What did you just say?" "I'm pregnant," I repeated, my voice steady, my gaze unwavering. I placed a hand protectively over my still flat stomach. That's not possible," he stammered. "How? When?" I let my eyes fill with tears. "Does it matter? Maybe it's Arthur's. Maybe it's yours. Who knows? It's all so confusing." I was deliberately planting doubt, creating a tangled web of possibilities. The timing was, of course, impossible for it to be Arthur's. But in his panicked state, he wouldn't be thinking logically. "No," he breathed, shaking his head, backing away from the door. "No, no, no. I'm scared, Ethan," I whispered, letting my voice tremble. "What are we going to do?" That word again, the shackle I was locking around his ankle. He stared at me, his handsome face pale and stricken. He looked at my face, then down at my stomach, where his imaginary child was supposedly growing. The trap had just snapped shut. He thought he was having a simple, sordid affair. He had no idea he had just walked into a life sentence. The look on his face was a mixture of horror, disbelief, and a dawning, terrible understanding. He saw it then, He was not my lover. He was not my confidant. He was my captive, and I would never, ever let him go. Ethan didn't flee. He couldn't. The grenade I'd thrown had blown the exit off its hinges. He stumbled back into the room and sank into an armchair, his head in his hands, muttering, "Oh God, oh God, oh God," like a mantra. The charismatic, confident surgeon was gone, replaced by a terrified man staring into the abyss of his own making. My performance, meanwhile, shifted from seductress to fragile, expectant mother. I wrapped myself in a silk robe, my movements slow and deliberate. I didn't press him. I didn't need to. The bomb was ticking, and the silence was more powerful than any accusation. "This will destroy her," he finally whispered, his voice muffled by his hands. He was talking about Claire. Even now, his first thought was of her. A fresh wave of venomous jealousy washed through me, but I kept my face a mask of gentle concern. "We don't have to tell her," I offered softly. We can figure this out. Just us." He looked up at me then, his eyes red-rimmed and full of a dawning horror. It was in that moment I think he began to truly understand the depth of the trap. I wasn't a partner in his mistake. I was the architect of his ruin. The affair, from that night on, transformed. It was no longer about stolen moments and forbidden passion. It became a grim, obligatory secret. We met, not in the moonlit bedroom of my mansion, but in sterile, anonymous hotel rooms on the other side of the bay. Our encounters were no longer frenzied collisions of desire. They were furtive, guilt-ridden, and shadowed by the lie I was nurturing. For me, it was a necessary chore to maintain the illusion. For him, it was a penance. He was a man going through the motions, his body present but his mind and heart a million miles away, back in the beautiful Pacific Heights home where his real life was slowly unraveling. Because Claire, as I had noted, was no fool. She didn't need a photograph or a private investigator. She was an intelligent, intuitive woman living with a man who was crumbling before her eyes. She saw the changes in him, the way he'd started drinking more heavily, the dark circles under his eyes from sleepless nights, the way he'd flinch when she touched him, the way he couldn't quite meet her gaze. She knew, she may not have known the specifics, that the other woman was me, his father's widow, but she knew there was another woman. The house grew cold, the silence between them stretching for days, broken only by the necessities of co-parenting and household management. The end of their secret and the beginning of the open warfare came in the most mundane way. A friend of Claire's, a woman named Susan, was having lunch at a waterfront restaurant in Sausalito. She saw us, Ethan and me, sitting at a secluded corner table. It was one of our grim, obligatory meetings. I was talking, my hand resting on his arm in a gesture of intimacy. Susan, thinking nothing of it other than a bit of gossip, snapped a quick, blurry photo on her phone and sent it to Claire. "Isn't that your stepmom? Seems a bit cozy with Ethan, no?" The text message landed in Claire's phone while she was in a meeting at school. She looked at the blurry image of her husband and his stepmother. My hand on his arm, our heads bent close together, and in that one grainy photograph, all the disconnected pieces of her husband's strange behavior, his distance, his guilt, clicked into place. The truth, in its full, grotesque horror, revealed itself to her. That evening, when Ethan came home, she was waiting for him. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. Her voice, when she spoke, was chillingly calm. "I know," was all she said. "Know what?" he asked, feigning ignorance, but his face had gone pale. She showed him the phone, the photo, her. Claire's voice was a whisper of pure, unadulterated disbelief. "My God, Ethan, The dam of his guilt and lies finally broke. He confessed everything, the whole sordid, pathetic story. But he didn't confess the truth. He confessed his version of the truth, the version where he was the victim. She was lonely, Claire, he pleaded, tears streaming down his face. She was grieving. She leaned on me, and I was weak. I felt sorry for her. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. But it's over. I swear, it's over. And then he delivered the final, cowardly blow. He told her about the pregnancy. Claire didn't react at first. She just stared at him, her face completely devoid of expression. She was processing a level of betrayal so profound it was beyond rage, beyond tears. He hadn't just cheated on her. He had cheated on her with his stepmother. He hadn't just had an affair. He had created a child, a grotesque new branch on their family tree, forever linking them to this sordid mess. She finally spoke, her voice flat and dead. "Get out. Claire, please, get out of my house." He was exiled. He showed up on my doorstep an hour later, a single duffel bag in his hand, his face ravaged by tears and despair. "She knows," he said, his voice a hollow wreck. "She kicked me out." I felt a surge of pure, cold triumph, but I hid it behind a mask of gentle sympathy. I opened the door wider. "It's all right," I said, my voice a soothing balm. "You're home now." I had won. I had him. He was here, under my roof, severed from his old life. The board was cleared. Now, we could begin. But the man who moved into my house was not the charismatic, powerful surgeon I had fantasized about. He was a ghost. He spent his days in a whiskey-fueled haze, wandering the cavernous rooms of the house like a prisoner on death row. He was trapped, and he hated me for it. I had won the battle, but the prize was a broken man who looked at me with nothing but contempt. "Is this what you wanted, Victoria?" He would slur at me from across the vast, empty dining table. "Did you enjoy blowing up my life? My family?" "I'm giving you a family," I would retort, my hand on my belly, which was now beginning to show a slight, definite curve. "I'm giving you a son." "You've given me a cage," he'd shout, his voice echoing in the silent house. The pregnancy that was supposed to be my ultimate victory had become the bars of both our prisons. It was during this dark, toxic period that Claire began to find her way back to the light. The man from the car accident, Julian, had called her, as promised. They met for coffee to sort out the insurance. The coffee turned into a long conversation. He was a widower, an architect with a quiet strength and a gentle humor that was the complete opposite of Ethan's tormented charisma. He listened. He didn't judge. He simply offered her a space to breathe. Their coffee meetings became a regular occurrence. He was a lifeline in the turbulent sea of her divorce. He was kind to Maya. He made Claire laugh, a sound she thought she had forgotten how to make. While Ethan and I were locked in our gilded cage, slowly poisoning each other with resentment, Claire was taking the first, tentative steps toward a new life. A life free of the Albright drama. A life that might, impossibly, be even better than the one she had lost. She was moving on, and that was something I simply could not allow. She was supposed to be the vanquished, the miserable ex-wife. Her happiness was an affront to my victory. It diminished my prize. If Ethan saw her moving on, saw her happy with someone else, what was to stop him from trying to do the same? I realized then that my plan was incomplete. It wasn't enough to have Ethan. I had to make sure he had no other options, no hope of escape. I had to isolate him completely, and that meant I had to deal with Claire. Chloe's appearance on my doorstep was like a live wire dropped into a pool of gasoline. I had managed the controlled burn of my plan with meticulous precision, but this girl was an unpredictable inferno. Ethan and I are having a child together, I said, my voice as cold and hard as the marble of the foyer floor. I placed a hand on my stomach, the gesture both maternal and territorial. I think that answers your question. Chloe let out a sharp, incredulous laugh. Wow, you're good. You're really good. The grieving widow, the surprise baby. It's a hell of a play, but I'm not in the audience, honey. I'm in the cast. She was brash, fearless, and she saw right through my performance. This was a new and dangerous kind of opponent. She wasn't bound by the rules of social decorum that governed Claire's world. She was a street fighter. I think you should leave, I said, moving to close the door. She put her hand out, stopping it. Not until I talk to him. He's been dodging my calls for a week. I want to know what the hell is going on. He's not here, I lied. Right on cue, Ethan's voice called out from the top of the stairs. Victoria? Who is it? Chloe's eyes lit up with a predatory gleam. She pushed past me into the house and looked up at him. Ethan, we need to talk. Ethan froze on the landing, his face paling as he saw her. He looked from Chloe's defiant stance to my icy glare, a man trapped between two warring armies. Chloe, what are you doing here? He stammered. I came to see my boyfriend, she said loudly, making sure I heard every word. The one who suddenly decided to ghost me after telling me he was leaving his wife for me. She then turned her gaze to me, her eyes narrowing. He just left out the part about moving in with his pregnant stepmother. The word stepmother was laced with so much venom it practically dripped poison. That's enough, Chloe, Ethan said, hurrying down the stairs. He grabbed her by the arm, trying to steer her back towards the door. This isn't the time or the place. Oh, I think it's the perfect time and place, she shot back, shaking his hand off. She turned her full attention to me. So, this is your grand plan? Trap him with a baby? How very original. Let me guess. You told him it was his. My blood ran cold. How could she know? It was a lucky guess. A shot in the dark, but it landed with terrifying accuracy. Get out of my house, I said, my voice low and trembling with rage. The confrontation devolved into a shouting match. Chloe, wild and unrestrained, hurled accusations. Ethan, panicked and cornered, tried desperately to placate both of us, and I stood my ground, the cold, regal queen of this chaotic, broken kingdom. The fight ended with Ethan practically dragging a screaming Chloe out of the house. I watched from the window as they argued on the driveway before she finally got in her car and sped off, tires squealing. When Ethan came back inside, he looked utterly defeated. Are you happy now? He asked, his voice a dead monotone. She's a child, Ethan, a vulgar, unstable child. You need to end it with her. For the sake of our family. He let out a hollow, bitter laugh. Our family? This isn't a family, Victoria. This is a hostage situation. And you're the one holding the gun. From that day on, Chloe became a persistent, unavoidable problem. She would show up at the hospital. She would call his phone incessantly. She sent me a series of harassing, anonymous text messages. He'll get tired of you, old woman. That baby won't keep him forever. I know your secret. That last one terrified me. She didn't know, not really. But she suspected. She was a chaos agent, and her unpredictability was a direct threat to the fragile stability I had built. Ethan, meanwhile, was being torn apart. He was trying to sever ties with Chloe, but she was clinging to him, using a mixture of threats and seductive promises. At the same time, he was trapped with me, his resentment growing with each passing day as my belly swelled, a constant, living reminder of his captivity. He started making mistakes at the hospital, small ones at first, a misplaced chart, a forgotten appointment. but his colleagues noticed. His hands, the gifted hands of a neurosurgeon, had developed a slight, almost imperceptible tremor. The stress was physically breaking him down. I knew I had to eliminate the Chloe problem permanently. I used the hospital's private resources, my status as Mrs. Albright still carrying significant weight. I had a discreet background check run on her. What I found was a goldmine. She wasn't just a wild art student. She had a sealed juvenile record for shoplifting, and more importantly, a history of making false accusations against an ex-boyfriend. She was unstable, and that made her vulnerable. I arranged a meeting with her. I chose a neutral location, a quiet, upscale hotel bar. I arrived early and chose a secluded booth. When she walked in, she looked defiant, but I could see the nervousness in her eyes. "What do you want?" she asked, sliding into the booth opposite me. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I slid a thick manila envelope across the table. "I want you to disappear." She opened the envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $50,000, and beneath it, a copy of her juvenile record and a sworn affidavit from her ex-boyfriend, detailing her history of harassment and false claims. Her face went pale. "How did you get this?" "I have resources, Chloe," I said calmly. "More resources than you can possibly imagine. That check is for you. A down payment on a new life, somewhere far away from here. You take it, you leave San Francisco, you never contact Ethan again, and these papers remain my little secret." She stared at me, her young, defiant face a mixture of fear and fury. "You're trying to buy me off. I'm offering you a choice," I corrected her. "The easy way or the hard way. The hard way involves me giving these papers to the hospital's board of directors, along with a detailed account of how you've been harassing their chief of neurosurgery, a young, unstable woman with a history of false accusations, stalking a respected, grieving surgeon who is trying to do right by his late father's pregnant widow. Who do you think they'll believe?" I saw the fight go out of her eyes. She was tough, but she wasn't stupid. She knew she was outmatched. "He'll never love you, you know," she spat, a last-ditch effort to wound me. "Love has nothing to do with this," I said, my voice flat. "This is about survival, something you should be thinking about right now." She looked at the check, then back at me. Her jaw was tight. She hated me, but she was a pragmatist. She took the envelope. "Fine," she said, her voice tight. "You win." She stood up and walked out of the bar without another word. I watched her go, a cold sense of satisfaction washing over me. I had neutralized the threat. I had won. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my club soda, the ice clinking against the glass. The board was clear again. All the pieces were back in their proper places, or so I thought. A week later, I was at my final prenatal appointment. The doctor was performing a routine ultrasound. I lay back, watching the grainy, black and white image of my son on the screen. "Everything looks perfect, Victoria," the doctor said, smiling. "He's a strong, healthy boy, and right on track. Your due date is exactly 1 week from today." 1 week. My blood ran cold. The words echoed in my ears. 1 week, the official due date, the one that would be on the birth certificate, the one that anyone could use to count backwards. I did the math in my head, a frantic, panicked calculation. I counted back the months, the weeks, the days, and a horrifying, catastrophic realization dawned on me. The timeline was wrong. It was impossibly, damningly, undeniably wrong. According to this due date, my son could not have been conceived with Ethan. The affair had started too late. There was a gap, a fatal 2-week gap in my story. It was a small detail, a tiny, overlooked flaw in my otherwise perfect plan. But it was a flaw that could unravel everything. All it would take was one person. One person with a reason to be suspicious, with access to a calendar and the ability to do simple math. And I knew exactly who that person would be. Claire. The doctor's cheerful pronouncement of my due date was a death sentence to my carefully constructed reality. The world tilted, the sterile white of the examination room swimming before my eyes. A 2-week gap, a chasm in my timeline wide enough to drive a truck through. It was a rookie mistake, a miscalculation born of desperation and arrogance, and it was going to destroy me. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. For the first time since this whole sordid saga began, I felt a genuine, gut-wrenching fear. I had outmaneuvered a grieving husband, seduced a conflicted son, and bought off a troublesome mistress. But I couldn't outmaneuver a calendar. I couldn't lie to biology. My son, my beautiful, innocent weapon, was also my ticking time bomb. I drove home from the hospital in a daze. The serene confidence I had felt after vanquishing Chloe evaporated, replaced by a frantic, buzzing anxiety. Every car that passed me felt like a threat. Every stranger's glance felt like an accusation. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that Claire would be the one to figure it out. She was smart, methodical, and she had every reason in the world to want to see me burn. When the birth announcement was made, with the baby's date of birth and weight and length all publicly recorded, she would see it. She wouldn't even need to be looking for it. The discrepancy would leap out at her. The dates wouldn't add up to her husband's confession, and she would know. She would know the baby wasn't Ethan's. And if the baby wasn't Ethan's, then the entire foundation of my claim to the Albright name, the Albright fortune, and Ethan himself would crumble into dust. The narrative of the grieving widow, seduced and impregnated by her stepson, would be exposed for what it was, a monstrous, calculated fraud. That evening, Ethan came home late, smelling of whiskey and despair. He had become a ghost in his own life, going through the motions at the hospital, coming home to the opulent prison I had built for him. He barely looked at me anymore. "The doctor says it will be next week," I said, my voice carefully neutral. I was testing him, watching his reaction. "Good," he said, his voice flat. He walked to the bar cart and poured himself a drink. No joy, no anticipation, just a weary resignation. The birth of his supposed son was just another mile marker on his road to perdition. He had no idea. He was too consumed by his own guilt and misery to question the details. He wouldn't be the one to expose me. It would be Claire. A new plan began to form in my mind. A dark and desperate improvisation. I could no longer control the timeline of the birth, but perhaps I could control the narrative surrounding it. I needed to further isolate Ethan, to sever the last remaining threads of sympathy between him and Claire. I needed to make him so toxic, so irredeemable in her eyes, that even if she discovered the truth about the baby, she wouldn't be able to use it. She would be too busy trying to protect her own daughter from him. I waited 2 days, letting the new plan marinate, letting my resolve harden. Then, I drove to Claire's new apartment. It was a modest but tasteful place in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood. It radiated a sense of peace that was a stark contrast to the gothic drama of my mansion. I buzzed her apartment. When she answered the intercom, her voice was wary. "Who is it?" "Claire, it's Victoria," I said, my voice soft and pleading. "Please, I need to talk to you, just for 5 minutes. It's important." There was a long pause. I could imagine her on the other end, her mind racing. Finally, the buzzer sounded, and the door clicked open. She met me at her apartment door. She didn't invite me in. She stood there, her arms crossed, her face a mask of cold neutrality. She looked tired, but there was a new strength in her posture, a resilience I hadn't seen before. Happiness, even a fledgling version of it, suited her. "What do you want, Victoria?" I began my performance. I let my eyes fill with tears. My hand went to my swollen belly. "I came to apologize," I whispered, my voice thick with manufactured remorse. I know what I've done is unforgivable. I've destroyed your family. I've destroyed Ethan." She just stared at me, her expression unreadable. "I was lonely," I continued, the well-rehearsed lines flowing easily, "and I was selfish. I took advantage of his grief, of his kindness, and now I've trapped him. He's miserable, Claire. He's drinking. He's falling apart. He talks about you and Maya all the time. He misses you so much." I was painting a picture of Ethan as a tragic, tormented soul, a victim of my predatory weakness. I was casting myself as the villain, a role I hoped would engender a sliver of sympathy for him from her. But Claire didn't take the bait. "What is the point of this, Victoria?" she asked, her voice dangerously quiet. "Do you want my forgiveness? Because you will never, ever have it. Do you want my pity? You deserve everything that's happening to you." "No," I said, shaking my head, a single tear tracing a path down my cheek. "I came to warn you." That got her attention. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Warn me about what?" I leaned in, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "He's not stable, Claire. The drinking, it's getting worse. He's become erratic, paranoid. He says terrible things. He blames you for leaving. He blames me for trapping him. He's full of rage. I'm actually becoming afraid of him." It was a brilliant, venomous lie. I was painting him as a potential threat, a monster. "I'm worried about Maya," I said, delivering the final, killing blow. "You need to be careful. I don't think he should be alone with her right now." I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes, the first crack in her icy composure. I had found her weak spot, her daughter. "He would never hurt Maya," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Wouldn't he?" I countered softly. "He's not the man you married anymore, Claire. I should know. I'm the one who has to live with what he's become." I let that sink in. Then I turned to leave. "I just thought you should know," I said over my shoulder. "Do with it what you will." She didn't need a photograph or a private investigator. She was an intelligent, intuitive woman, living with a man who was crumbling before her eyes. She saw the changes in him, the way he'd started drinking more heavily, the dark circles under his eyes from sleepless nights, the way he'd flinch when she touched him, the way he couldn't quite meet her gaze. She would be so focused on protecting Maya from the unstable father that she wouldn't have time to focus on destroying me. It was a desperate, high-stakes gamble, but it was the only move I had left. The baby was born 5 days later, a healthy boy. As I held him in my arms in the private hospital suite that Arthur's money had paid for, I felt a dizzying mix of emotions. There was the cold, clinical satisfaction of a plan completed, but there was also something else, something unexpected. As his tiny hand curled around my finger, I felt a surge of fierce, primal protectiveness. He was real. My lie had become flesh and blood, and I would do anything, absolutely anything, to protect him. Ethan came to the hospital. He looked at the baby in the bassinet with a strange, detached curiosity. He looked like a man observing a natural disaster from a safe distance. There was no connection, no joy. "What are you going to name him?" he asked, his voice hollow. I looked from the baby's face to Ethan's. "Arthur," I said. "His name is Arthur." The cruelty of the gesture was not lost on him. I saw him flinch. I had not only given my son his dead father's name, but I had also forever linked this child of deception to the Albright legacy. The birth announcement went in the paper the next day. Arthur Albright Jr., born October 26th. I waited for the phone call from Claire, the angry confrontation, the arrival of a lawyer with a court order for a paternity test. But the call never came. Days turned into a week, then 2. Silence. My plan had worked. Claire was so consumed with the narrative I had fed her, of Ethan, the unstable, raging drunk, that she hadn't even bothered to look at the calendar. She was too busy building walls to protect her daughter to look for holes in my story. I had done it. I had survived. The final piece was in place. But as the weeks turned into months, and I settled into my new life as the wealthy, single mother of the last Albright heir, I began to realize that winning and surviving are not the same as being happy. Ethan was a ghost in my house, a shell of a man bound to me by a child that wasn't his, and a sense of duty he couldn't shake. And my son, my beautiful, innocent Arthur Jr., was a constant, living reminder of the monstrous lengths I had gone to for a life that was, in the end, just as empty and lonely as the one I'd had before. I had cleared the board of all my enemies, only to find myself completely, utterly, and terrifyingly alone. The only sound in my vast, silent mansion was the ticking of the clock, and the soft, innocent breathing of the lie I now had to live with for the rest of my life.